to watch. Gaze upon my wrath.
I am the storm that is approaching.
You know, I don't think there's a single thing everyone loves and hates to see as much as a critical hit. It's either the reason you win a combat or the reason you lose. But in SMT, they're either the reason physical is able to compete with magic at all, or the reason it completely eclipses it, depending on the game. But no matter the game, nothing is ever better than seeing that red critical text over your enemies' heads. In the original SMT5, crit builds were one of the best builds in the game, with skills like Critical Aura turning skills like Myriad Slashes from high risk, high reward, into skills that turn your opponents into puddles of blood. But just how good are critical hits in Vengeance? Are they strong enough to compete with not fishing for weaknesses? Do they contend against the onslaught that is piercing or almighty attacks? Absolutely. Crit builds are one of the best builds in the game yet again. I'm not making any allusions to whether crits are good in this video. We all know crit builds are insane in Vengeance. So today, we're going to explain why. And as a bonus challenge, I want to answer a question. Can you get 100% crit rate in this game? So the first thing I can tell you is that, unlike in Nocturne, critical hits are based on luck. Infamously to any longtime fans of the channel, in Shin Megami Tensei Nocturne, critical hits were based on your accuracy with the given skill. Thus, the dominant stats for critical hits were agility and level, not luck. And leveling up actually decreased your physical accuracy, so likewise your crit rate. Thankfully, none of that is true here. But that doesn't necessarily mean that luck is the dominant stat. Now, every demon can crit, of course, but only a few can crit using magic attacks. Lakshmi allows allies to crit if they're at +2 offense, Lamu does the same but for skills with positive potential. But what if there was a demon that could crit with magic all the time?
Any last words? Die.
Agrat Bamarat is one of the most infamous bosses in the game's new canon of Vengeance route, for two simple reasons. Firstly, her passive, Kaddish 2 Artifice, allows all Kaddish 2 allies, including herself, to crit using magic attacks. This does not give her a bonus to crit chance, it simply means she rolls for crits on magic at all. Secondly, her unique skill, Queen's Decree, is 12 hits of minuscule almighty damage against random targets. These two things combine to turn Agrat into a crit machine. But why exactly is that? Queen's Decree doesn't have an increased crit rate, so what's the deal? Well, let's step through this. In this clip here, I'm running myself, Artemis, Konohana Sakuya, and Horus. Agrat activates her unlimited blade works, hitting 12 times, but only scoring 1 critical hit against Konohana Sakuya. Her AI is set that she'll go for Queen's Decree so long as she has 3 press turns. So if she gets a crit with the first one, she'll still have those 3 turns, and will use it again immediately up to 3 times. So she swings again, this time getting a crit on Artemis, but then the chain breaks as Horus is able to dodge the next attack. So let's step through the formula. The first step, just as with damage, is to calculate the root value, which is called such as it is the starting value from which the rest of the formula is derived. In the case of critical hits, this is equal to the attacker's luck plus 10 divided by the defender's luck plus 10. This means that Agrat will have a unique root for every target she's attacking. Her luck is 35 in the boss fight, so the numerator of this equation will always be 45, but the denominator is different for each person. For sake of example, we'll go with Konohana Sakuya, since she deserves to get crit for being a DLC demon made to invalidate Idun's existence. So, 45 divided by 51 plus 10 is equal to 45 divided by 61 is equal to 0.7377. Note that if this would ever result in a value above 4.0, the root gets set to 4. This is why you crit more often against low-level enemies. With our root established, we move on to the base, which is equal to the attacker's level plus 10 divided by the defender's level plus 10 plus the root squared, all of which is then multiplied by 3. This one's another fairly simple equation. Agrat's level 50 as a boss, and Sakuya was level 62. Thus, 50 plus 10 divided by 62 plus 10 plus 0.7377 squared times 3. The fraction simplifies to 60 divided by 72, and the square becomes 0.5442. 60 divided by 72 is 0.8333, thus the sum is 1.37754. That times 3 is equal to 4.1326. This will act as Agrat's base crit rate against Konohana Sakuya, who I'm going to start calling Kono now to save on time. So Agrat's base crit is 4.1326. This is then modified by a series of formulas to determine her final odds of landing a crit with Queen's Decree. So let's step through this one at a time. While skill is technically the first thing on the formula, order of operations dictates we should first talk about Glee. Glee refers to Bloody and Murderous Glee, two passive skills which modify the base crit rate of the attacker, boosting it by 80% and 150% respectively. Worth noting, the Glee skills exclusively affect the base crit rate, so they will not have a greater effect on skills with higher crit rates like Brave Blade. Speaking of, skill is the skill's base crit rate. This applies to skills like Frey Kugel and Brave Blade that have an increased crit chance. The way order of operations applies, the Glee skills are multiplied into the base crit rate, and a result is added to the base of the skill. This is also why skills with a 200% crit rate will always crit, since no matter what happens later into the formula, the lowest a 200% crit rate can get reduced to is 100%. No skill mod and no Glee makes skill 0 and Glee 1.0. 4.1326 times 1 is equal to itself, plus 0 is also equal to itself. So we have 4.1326 times the level correction modifier times difficulty times innate. Let's get to everyone's favorite mechanic, level scaling. Depending on how much higher or lower level the attacker is compared to the defender, crit rate goes up or down. This means that, once again, luck is not the primary factor in crit rate. I guess we should at least be thankful it doesn't get worse over time anymore. Thankfully, the formula for level scaling crit rate is simpler than it was for damage. If the attacker is lower than the defender's level, the scaling is equal to 1 minus the square root of the defender's level minus the attacker's level divided by 60, plus the defender's level minus the attacker's level divided by 120, with a bottom cap of 0.5. If the attacker's level is higher than the defender's level, but not by more than 11, level correction is equal to 1 plus the attacker's level minus the defender's level times 0.025. And lastly, if the attacker is 11 or more levels higher than the defender, the level correction is equal to 1.25 plus the attacker's level minus the defender's level minus 10 divided by 60, plus the attacker's level minus the defender's level minus 10 divided by 120, with an upper cap of 1.5. Just like with damage, level scaling can never increase or decrease your crit rate by more than 50%. So for Kono, she is 12 levels above Agrat, so we'll use the first formula. Level correction is equal to 1 minus the square root of 62 minus 50 divided by 60, plus 62 minus 50 divided by 120. We can simplify that down to the square root of 12 divided by 60 and 12 divided by 120. This is equal to 3.461 divided by 60 and 0.1. 3.4641 divided by 60 is equal to 0.0577. Added to 0.1, we get a total of 0.1577. 1 minus that is equal to 0.8423. This means that Agrat's level gap results in her losing about 15% of her crit rate here, getting a 0.8423 modifier to her crit rate. Difficulty refers to the modifier given based on difficulty. Both normal and hard mode here get nothing, and are 1.0 for both the player and the enemy. However, the player is given a boosted critical rate on casual and safety difficulties, 1.2 and 1.5 respectively. But for most players, you won't be getting a bonus here. And lastly, innates are the product of all innate skills that benefit crit rates. All relevant passives are multiplied together. So if you had, say, a Hayataro at +1 Tsukukaja or greater, a Slime on the field with a target afflicted with an ailment, and Glacial Bolus at +2 Tsukukaja, Hayataro would gain a 2.0 bonus from his own passive, and a 1.5 bonus from Glacial Bolus and Slime's passives. This would round out to a 4.5 times multiplier. Of course, since Agrat is alone, she gets nothing, but maybe we can come back to that later. The game then does a series of checks that trump all other things. These are applied in the following order, with each thing trumping all things that come before it. If the attacker has fickle personality, hits a weakness, has an Omogotoki effect, and has positive skill potential, then the attack is a crit. If the attacker has critical aura active, the attack is a crit. If the defender resists the attack is not a crit. If the attacker has a Mogotoki critical, the attack is a crit. If the defender is guarding, the attack will not crit. This means that guarding makes you immune to critical hits, full stop. Whereas resisting an attack makes you immune to critical hits unless the attacker has a Mogotoki critical. With a fairly simple formula, we can run the numbers and see that 4.1326 times 0.8423 gives Agrat a 3.48% crit rate, which gets truncated to the nearest percent, giving her a 3% crit rate against Konohama Sakuya. That's pretty bad, actually. And while we didn't run the numbers for everyone else, let me tell you, her crit rate against the rest of my party isn't much better. So with such a pitiful crit rate, how does Agrat become the infamous crit-happy boss we know her to be? Simple. Statistics.
Let's go gambling!
A wise woman once said, the more times we roll the dice, the more likely it is to come up tails at least once. This is the philosophy behind Queen's Decree. Even if each attack only has a minuscule crit rate, the more she fires, the better her odds are, since she is rolling for critical hits on each individual attack. There are multiple ways to calculate this, but the way I find easiest is to take the odds of not seeing a crit, in this case 97%, and multiplying it into itself a number of times equal to the number of attacks. The odds 12 hits all hit Konosakiya and none of them crit are 69.3842%. Invert this and we see that Agrat has a 30.6158% chance to see at least one crit, which means she gets to fire off another Queen's Decree. Now, Queen's Decree is random target, so not every hit is going to hit Kono, but that's okay, because remember, her crit rate against everyone else was higher. Considering random target moves pick their targets, well, randomly, this means we can take the average of these four rates to get her true rate of 40.3182%, which is astronomical. This means that every time Agrat decides to use Queen's Decree, she has a rough 40% chance to use another one. The odds you see 3 back-to-back Queen's Decrees is around 16.26%, and that's with this over-leveled team. Odds are a normal run would be much worse off. This is why multi-hit moves feel so good. Even if their crit rate is the same as a normal move, they have a higher crit rate by virtue of their existence. The more times you roll the dice, the more effective crit rate is, giving Agrat a monstrous crit rate. And yet, not a guaranteed crit rate. We were looking to replace a Mogatoki critical, weren't we? And boss Agrat simply isn't capable of doing that, statistics be damned. We need something a bit stronger, and for that, we'll need to stack our team. So we're gonna enter the realm of theory crafting territory. First, let's see if Agrat can do it, and for that, she's gonna need some friends. Introducing Team Crit Dish Stew, Agrat Bar Malat, Aishet Zenuim, and Namaz Dog, Glacia Labolas. As stated, Glacia is the bestest boy, as he gives his entire party a 1.5 boost to crit rate, so long as he is at maximum evasion. Meanwhile, Aishet straight up doubles the crit rate of all Kadishtu in the party, along with herself. Since we're really stress testing crit rates now, let's put this up against a more worthy opponent, the Demi-Fiend. Demi-Fiend unironically makes for a very good test dummy, as he has 99s in every stat, making him a very good control. And also, who doesn't want to have a 100% crit rate against this guy? So for this example, we'll assume the optimal build for Agrat. That is to say, Glacia has been given +2 Sukukaja, and Agrat is somewhere after his turn. This can be easily achieved by assuming that Glacia or Aishet move first and then attack, getting a crit or striking a weakness, and then Nahobino uses the extra turn to use Inflaming Divinity and put Glacia at +2. This gives Agrat the maximum chance she needs to crit, and from here, we can further maximize her odds by ensuring that she is running Bloody Glee and Murderous Glee for that 3.3 times multiplier. This gives her a root of 0.8165, a base of 5.0, which is a rounding miracle, can I just say, and after being multiplied by 3.3, 2.0, and 1.5, results in a crit rate of 49.5% per hit. Rolled 12 times, this results in an effective crit rate of 99.9690, which is as close to guaranteed as one can hope for. But I don't put my faith in hope. If you want this strategy to crit 100% of the time against Demi-Fiend, you'll need to start farming incenses, because you won't see a 100% crit rate until Agrat's luck is 158. And while that is certainly achievable in standard play, keep in mind, this is a very specific situation against one of the highest luck enemies in the game. Against Shiva, the game's original super boss, this strategy fares much better without even a single incense. Shiva actually has very little luck, only having 37, making him quite susceptible to crit builds. 79 plus 10 divided by 37 plus 10 is equal to 1.8936. This in turn means that even though the levels are quite similar, the higher root results in a much higher base of 13.8423. Shiva's level only being 96 also means we get a slight level correction modifier in our favor, since we're above his level but not by 11 or more. 1 plus the attacker's level minus the defender's level times 0.025. This is equal to 99 minus 96 times 0.025, which is equal to 3 times 0.025 is equal to 0.075, for a level correction multiplier of 1.075. Thus, our crit rate is 0 plus 13.8423 times 3.3 times 1.075 times 1 times 2 times 1.5. This is equal to 45.6796 times 1.075 times 3. 1.075 times 3 is equal to 3.225. Multiplied into 45.6796 is equal to 147.3167, which truncates down to a 147% crit rate. What barely chipped Demi-Fiend's paint absolutely obliterates Shiva, allowing Agrat to use Critical Zealot without any form of setup, so long as Glacia is at +2.
Last words. Now die.
So we know it's very possible to get a demon to 100% crit rate if you have enough luck or level on them. But what's the highest crit rate we can physically achieve? Well, to answer that, we need to first find who has the highest solo crit rate, and then from there, go into a full party setup. So, raise your hands if you think you know which demon we're going to use. Alright, now put your hands down if your answer was Masakato. Yep, shockingly, Masakato is not the answer here. Given Masakato does absolutely rank second place, as his passive Scarlet Blade increases critical damage and critical hit rate by 10% and 40% respectively for each condition he has. This means if Masakato has an attack modifier, a defense modifier, an accuracy and evasion modifier, either Canopy Veil or Shield of God, an ailment, an Omogatoki effect, a charge effect, a shield effect like Fizz Block or Tetrakarn, and a taunt effect, he will receive a 1.9 times bonus to crit damage and a whopping 4.6 times bonus to crit rate. But sadly, Masakato is not the highest crit rate you can achieve. Is it Zeus, who gains 5% for every living demon in stock on electric moves? Is it Siegfried, who doubles his crit rate while a Drake, Dragon, or Snake is deployed? Nope. It's this thing. I'm serious. Nue's passive, Hand You're Dealt, gives Nue a 30% bonus for every weakness in the party. This already gives him a 1.6 times multiplier at base, as he is weak to both Force and Charm, but keep in mind, I said in the party. We can take this much further. The demon with the most weaknesses in the game is Seashai, being weak to Dark as well as every single ailment. This adds 7 weaknesses, adding a 2.1 times multiplier for a total of 3.7. But if we use Shishai's essence to give the Nahobino his affinities, we can also add a 2.1 to that again, for a total of 5.8. And as if that wasn't enough, tack on any demon weak to 5 things, like say, Slime, and we add another 1.5 to the total. This gives the party 21 weaknesses, meaning Nue receives a staggering 7.3 times multiplier to his critical hit rate. This, alongside the bonus provided by Glee, would provide Nue a monumental 24.09 times bonus to crit rate. For reference, if you used a fresh level 49 Nue with no stat boosts, gave him both Glees and Freikugel, and told him to shoot it at the Demi-Fiend, he'd have a 97% crit rate at level 49 on the Demi-Fiend. But what about a more adequately leveled Nue? Well, I might not have finished the game yet, but Deus has. So I asked him if he could level me a Nue to 99 so I could test off of it. And he sent me back this. At level 99 with 80 luck and the allies we've mentioned, this Nue will crit with literally every strength-based attack on every enemy in the game, without fail. But that's the highest crit rate we can achieve with just Nue by himself. What about with the help of some friends? Well, we will still absolutely be using Nue for group crit rate, and this is actually why I picked Slime earlier. While there are many demons with 5 different weaknesses, only Slime has access to Deathly Affliction, a skill which increases the crit rate of all allies by 1.5, so long as the target is afflicted with an ailment. But what about our last slot? Well, Zisai might have been perfect for his affinities, but sadly, he's not bringing anything to the table crit-wise. So we'll be taking him out in favor of Glacia Bolus. Glacia might only have 1 weakness, reducing Hand You're Dealt from 7.3 to 5.5, But as stated before, he provides his own 1.5 times multiplier if he's at +2 accuracy and evasion, which rounds out to a higher crit rate. So 5.5 times 1.5 times 1.5 times 3.3 from the Glee skills results in a crit modifier of 40.8375. Or to put it another way, this setup gives Nue 4,083.75% of his base crit rate. Plug this into the crit rate formula, and our level 99 Nue would have a 206% crit rate against the demi-feed. But why stop there? If we reduce the level and luck of the target, we can make this even bigger. Put him against Shiva again. At level 96 with 37 luck, we get a level scaling modifier, which gives Nue a 618% crit rate against Shiva. And as long as we're scaling down, why not commit to it? A level 1 slime in Minato has 4 luck, which, when accounting for the differences in root base and level scaling, means that this Nue with 80 luck at level 99 would have a crit rate of 4,761%. But that's nothing. Safety difficulty provides a 1.5 times bonus to crit rate. This extra 1.5 gives us a crit rate of 7,141%. We cannot push crit any higher than this. Wait, the skill modifier. I have avoided 200% crit rate moves so far, but what could one acrobat kick hurt? Do it. Special thanks to CTOBN for finding all the formulas and allowing me to bother him with questions. Deus for the stats of a level 99 Nue, and Jaffinator2166 for all the additional footage. If you saw a Nahabino whose name wasn't Dick, that was his. And of course, special thanks to all Patreon backers including T, Hound, Dylan Toomey, Draco, Axel Rosenberg, Trekker96, Kirara, Cuddlefish, Gracemy, Sokekian, and Caius Cole, as well as YouTube members Chaotic Muffins 8780, Luna Rose, Tagless, Miss Rock, Hunter Regal, Chiquito, Big Heavy 4, Scott Rauch, Nabdi Nabdi, Midna, Moshi, Jaffinator2166, Oplin 2, Not D Wadler, Fabrizio Pigdataro, Axel Ryman, Ryoko Strifer, Dawn Shimmer, and Caius Cole again. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. You are a boring and creative insult. Don't change yourself for other people. Be who you really are.